Welcome to the Globally Connecting New Media Art Archives. This is our panelists, and we will get started with the slides now. Throughout the world, institutions, artists, organizations, and companies are in the process of developing archives of their new media art collections in an effort to preserve the history of this ever-changing medium. Many of these efforts focus on the development of online, open access archives that use the internet to disseminate the information. From small individual artist collections to massive organizational and institutional archives, the accumulated data defines the history of an art medium that evolves and is often transient in nature. Researchers, educators, artists, and community members seeking information about new media artists and scholars currently depend on internet search engines, which prioritize sites based on algorithms which often bypass less traversed sites and obscure information. Because of these limitations, an initiative has been underway to establish a protocol and API to connect information related to new media artists and their work contained in online archives internationally. This panel, okay. There we go. This panel focuses on the conceptual, procedural, and technical aspects of the International Connecting New Media Archive project. This pilot project is a joint effort between the archives of the following individuals. Let's go back, I'm sorry. And I'm sitting here with my colleagues that are involved in this project. We'll start off with the Archive of Digital Art, which is known as ADA. Ars Electronica Archives, which are not involved in this talk, but are definitely involved in the pilot project. The Electronic Language International Festival Archives, which is FILE, and Paula will be representing that. The International Symposium on Electronic Art Archives, and that is IZEA, and Terry will be representing that. The ACM SIGGRAPH History Archives, which I will be talking about, and also the University of Brasilia and the Tynacan project is also involved in that. Representatives from the participating organizations have been meeting via Zoom to exchange information, technical expertise, methodologies, and ideas in an effort to create a structured, inclusive, and open data approach to connect archives that contain information related to new media art. These organizations have collaboratively developed a common data model which compares the taxonomies and data fields related to artists, researchers, and others across the archives. Progress has also been made to establish the shared data connection to Wikidata and automating the display of links to other archives if persons within our archives exists in another archive. Each of the participating organizations they're also actively engaged in fundamental functional improvements to their own archives, which both hinders and facilitates the advancement of our unified efforts. Here we go. Collectively, these organizations are identifying challenges such as intermittency of resources, coordination between overlapping and incongruent information structures, and the long-term sustainability of connecting archives. Ultimately, The aim is to enable others' archives to join the initiative, thus creating a unified worldwide network of new media art archives. 4 of the archives involved in this initiative have joined me today. They're going to be talking about the work they're doing to prepare to connect their archives to other new media art archives. After the presentations, we will have a panel discussion to address issues related to collections, technologies, and partners. But first, I would like to introduce Philipp Hoffmann, who will talk about the ADA archive. Welcome, Philipp.
Thank you, Bonnie. Hi, my name is Philipp Hoffmann. I might be written down as Karl Hoffmann. I'm from Australia originally, but the last 6 years I've lived and worked in Austria at the University of Continuing Education Krems on a project, or a couple of projects, to develop and improve on the archive of digital art. So today I'd like to spend just a few minutes describing our archive and some of the contrasts that we found with other archives, and then four key points really about the process of our project's engagement in the Connecting Archives initiative. And that's a few comments about project life cycles, the challenges, lessons, and things that come out of that, the approach of adopting and replicating work already done and sharing that, and that all leads us to a conclusion around the power of connecting. So, I'd like to talk about ADA, the Archive of Digital Art. It's an online platform, been online in various forms since last century. In fact, it was originally called the Database of Virtual Art, and it was introduced in 1999 by Professor Oliver Grau, my professor, renamed to ADA, Archive of Digital Art, in 2009. It's one of the pioneering online archives of digital and virtual art and was conceptualized as such, but additionally conceptualized very much as not a static archive, but a living one, a social space, a collaborative space, something that engages with artists or scholars or other users in order to add to its content. And as a key value add in the domain of virtual art, we try to capture what is called extended or expanded documentation. And that's in the context of not only wanting to display the art, but curatorial notes, technical notes, in terms of preservation, archiving, or re-exhibiting work that is based on, for example, technologies which have become obsolete. Now I'll go for it. So to talk a bit about project life cycles, and my background is in technology project work and architecture, and when I came to the project, we have funding for a number of different initiatives, one of which is the Connecting Archives element. And of course, we plotted out a very clear progression of planning and technology, implementation, and so on. So, you know, that's all a very theoretical approach, but the reality of projects is something quite different. Now, from an administrative point of view, sometimes that's a bad thing. However, the reality, I think, as we all accept, is projects are chaotic and we need to retain some flexibility. However, in that chaos are points at which we can change our direction or change what we're doing based on interaction with collaborators and colleagues. So the reality is theory, the practice is different, and of course that is the difference between theory and practice. The challenges we encounter in the realm of digital, virtual, electronic, and generally media art is, of course, multiple. Most fundamentally, there is a process of digitization, particularly with pioneering electronic and media art. That's the most basic step of putting things online and remains a huge burden because that's manual work, difficult to automate, and with significant media artworks, usually highly individual. So for example, this shot is from the archives of the Ars Electronica Center in Linz, Austria. And I can translate there in German. It says, nicht digitalisiert, which means not yet digitized, but inventoried. And that we find is the state of play with many things. So all projects have a process of continual ingestion. That can be fun. Once things are digitized, we come to the topic of what we're talking about here in terms of connecting archives. And so a fundamental challenge is, well, they're all different. Organically so, necessarily so, architecturally so. So you can see on this slide, I'm presenting just a screenshot of Ada. And in Ada, we are very much artist-focused or people-focused. But for example, if we look at other archives, particularly archives of events, of conferences, things like this is a much more static collection, notwithstanding actually the acquisition or data entry in the first place. The challenge then is, how do we reconcile this broad domain of knowledge across different silos? The example we have here is Eduardo Kac, a prominent media artist that we've documented significantly and even featured in Ada. And Eduardo Kac exists in other archives. Part of our challenge is simply understanding what objects, what elements are the fundamental things described in archives. Secondly, once we've got a common understanding, the challenge is then how do we share programmatically or automate that information? And we get down into the technical details like misspellings, full names, partial names, the fundamentals of trying to match data. An approach this project has adopted is then to try and reconcile from a central repository or test at a central repository. So what we've identified is, if we have an object, in this case people, in our archive, what we want to do is look at a repository in Wikidata where they collect, based on the wiki model, identities of artists, not necessarily media artists, but artists generally. This is a starting point for us to see if someone already exists. And the technical work we're developing is that we implement in our database a method that checks whether an artist already exists in the Wikidata collection. If they do, we import that ID, and from then on are able to publish or replicate the fact that our information corresponds to a person found in a central repository. Doesn't matter whether that central repository has additional information. Its value is as an index to which other archives can also perform the same reconciliation. And through this, implicitly understand that two archives that are not necessarily directly connected do have the ability to reconcile their data. The lessons of this connection, and I'm just teasing here, is we are able, with more comprehensive data sets, to do interesting analysis and visualization. So this is a prototype from another part of our project work in terms of displaying an artist and and the genre keywords attached to that artist or that artist's works in the taxonomy we have developed. As you can imagine, that process of reconciling a person's identity, we can also apply then to things like reconciling taxonomical terms, ontologies, things like that. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. The replication of partners' methods point I want to make is basically that different projects occur at different times, have different technical capabilities at different times. So while, for example, our project concentrated on visualization and maintained contact with the working group, we were able to identify that our colleagues in Latin America have already progressed in implementing, for example, code to perform that Wikidata replication. And so we will be doing exactly the same replication in the months to come. So the value, again, is in not developing from first principles or trying to solve all your own problems. So in this particular instance, file will match with Wikidata, Ada will match with Wikidata, but the tool chain we use in the middle is comprised of shared intellectual property and also then one's own individual IP that you need to develop to connect to your system. The point being that, as Bonnie alluded, we, in our working group, spent a lot of time trying to compare data structures And because of the histories, because of the organic development of acquisition of information, and because of the different purposes of archives, those data structures are very incongruent. So the point I want to make out is learn to think about your collections in an abstract way. What information are you presenting? Because that may be very separate to how you've structured or inherited the storage. If you can, yeah. So I've got another teaser here of more visualization work we've done in our project, which will be looking at keywords in our taxonomy and the density of networks in terms of artworks that share those keywords. But I want to take that as a metaphor because whilst that's a relatively straightforward mathematical exercise, the power of connecting is in the conversations we've had over the last 2 years, simply to get to a basic understanding of how much work we have ahead of us. The flip side is, the flip side is with the power of connection, we have the power of visualization and interpretation. So part of our project is also looking at how do you look at galleries or image collections in a virtual or augmented environment. This is one of my colleagues testing out one of my other colleagues' prototypes. And the value of those interfaces will be multiplied by the expansive domain of shared information that we can build. But it is a very long journey. So my point is, I have an archive, or we have an archive that we're looking after. It's existed for a long time. We very much approach our work with a similar long-term output. We're very mindful of the difference between theory and practice in projects, and we just keep practicing. The challenge of addressing the disorder is that it provides insight, and that informs your rigid project plan, which actually is a bit of a chaotic mess. The value of partnering, yes, it's in shared code and IP, but it's also in developing these relationships which let us address the technical aspects that we miss, refine the technical aspects we miss. It is through the power of these partnerships that we're able to develop, the tools for exploration and keep that conversation going. So thank you very much for your attention. I would like to introduce Paula to talk about the file archive. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm Paula Perissinotto. I'm a co-founder and co-organizer of File Festival. And today I will give a quick overview of what File Archive project meant. Firstly, I would like to talk, the initiative carried out by the independent non-profit cultural organization. We are an organization, non-government, related of any institution, and the goal is to make available and share its collections of event documentation, which brings together 23 years of archivement. The archive aims to provide an accessible and free offline and online environment for anyone interested. So the offline archive contains 2 separate blocks of the festival documentation, stored in a special box and AZ folders. The first block contains the festival initial documentation, which was produced and accumulated between the year 2000 and 2010. And the other block contains paperwork from 2011 to the present. Artist projects, documentations, publications, programs, and all the things that we received by mail. During the first 10 years, it's in this offline archive. Moving to the online archive, we've used the Tainacan solution, which is a free, flexible, and powerful software for building digital collection repository in WordPress. The online archive includes various events such as exhibitions, performances, symposiums, workshops, and publications. And we currently have thousands of records available on the online archive. We've been done already more than 3,000 inputted. And we are also, during this process, realized that the artists' IDs in the Wikipedia is crucial for creating a globally connected new media art archive. So to achieve this, we are partnered with the Wiki movement in Brazil to integrate the File Festival into the GLAM Wiki system. I think it's in, oh, this is the data, yeah. The GLAM Wiki system, and which encompasses galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. With this collaboration, we were able to create an Excel table that include all the artists' names already presented in the festival online archive. And the Wiki team in Brazil assisted us in creating the necessary artist ID. Once the artist IDs have been established, the next crucial step is to create entries about the artist on the Wikipedia. Most of the artists are young and they don't have any information on the Wiki. Some have, but it's not related to the information of the archive. So by creating entries about new media artists on Wikipedia, we can contribute significantly to the development of media art history, share valuable information about this artist with a global audience, and connect with other new media art archives. So that's why FILE is collaborating with the International Wikidata team to organize a workshop called Editathon. On July 5th, we will be hosting an online event accessible from anywhere in the world. The Editathon is a marathon of edit on Wikipedia with a particular focus on enhancing articles about artists who have participated in previous editions of FILE from all corners of the globe, more than 48 countries. Finally, if you are interested in participate, please note that you need to create a Wikipedia account, and if you haven't already, you are generally interested in taking part of this, send an email to this address on the slide so we can provide with you the necessary information. It would be very nice to have as much people as possible involved. We are trying to get this to make an effort to make it happen. So this is where the stage we are now in this work, and we think that this it's a shame that Dalton is not here. Actually, it was him who was supposed to be here, not Fabiana, but he is the guy who was helping us to make this connection with the Wikidata, and we will be listening to him on Saturday, more about the conception that he created to make this connection through Wiki. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I will now introduce Terry Wong, who's carrying the IZIA archive. Yeah.
Thank you, Paula.
You have it.
Sorry. Thank you, Paula. Okay. So my name is Terry Wong. I'm one of the archivists for ICEA Archives. And also, I'm one of the member for the organization committee for the Summit on New Media Art Archiving that will be taking place on this Friday and Saturday. I would like to take this opportunity to invite all the audience. If you could make it, it would be grateful that you could be coming to the summit. And we are also having a panel for connecting archive on the summit. We will have more discussion on this topic as well. So let me talk about ICEA Archive right now. So ICEA itself is a nomadic international symposium, began in 1988. And one of the challenges we have with ICEA's data is that because the nomadic characteristic, sometimes we will receive data variation from year to year. So this is one of the challenges we have to face with our archives. And what we do with the archive is that we archiving the contributors and their work at ICEA Symposium. Okay, currently we have two online repositories. One is the classic and the other one is the new archive. We are in the process of migrating data from the classic to the new archive. At the same time, we are updating all the new contents. So for this year, we will be updating all the ICEA 2023 Paris content to both archives. I'm going to talk a little bit about the back end for the two archives. So for the classic archive, it is a text-based version, and it has the capability of like embedding videos in it, but very limited with images. So we improve the function in the new archive with the port plugin. So the port plugin could help us to enhance the data structure and also making relationship with the embedded metadata. Also, we added a function to be able to upload videos, files, and all the other media files in the archive. So we are more ready to connect with other archives at this point. And back in 2020, ICEA Archive did some experiment with SIGGRAPH History Archive. We did some initial connection with our data because we share a very similar backend with the port and the WordPress backend. We extended the experiment with some other archives. So what you're looking at here is the artist information page in ICEA Archives. And so basically you can see that we have links from the linking to SIGGRAPH History Archives, Art Electronica Archives, and ADA. So by doing this, we'll be able to bring up a bigger picture of an artist's collections and also multiple perspective of the artist. We also added a new function to export data. So we are ready to export the data and make comparison with other archives and be more ready to make the connection. The current challenges and goals we have, first is the data migration from the classic to the new archive, and also at the same time updating all the new content. And we also need a lot of proofreading from our existing data. And in order to make the connection, we also have to review the data categorization and the taxonomy. Because we are a volunteer-based archive, so we are constantly looking for volunteers, and overall, and also another challenge would be overall resource management. So we need to hire a volunteer for our content and programming constantly. Thank you. So I'll pass it to Bonnie to talk about Bonnie Mitchell to talk about SIGGRAPH History Archives.
SIGGRAPH is an organization that is part of a much larger organization, which is the Association for Computing Machinery. And so it focuses primarily on computer graphics, which includes art and very technical papers, production from Hollywood-type studios, and it's just incredibly diverse. So the archive that we're developing is a repository for all of the information and images and projects that have been presented at the conference. We are also going to be extending it to include a lot of the year-round activities that happen within the SIGGRAPH communities, such as, if you haven't heard of this, is the Sparks series. And Sparks is the short presentations of art and research for the kindred spirit, and it happens once a month. Really amazing presentations. So we will be working on expanding that. As part of this project, it became necessary to start a physical archive. We are going to be talking more extensively about that physical archive and its relationship to the online archive this afternoon at 4:30. So the SIGGRAPH archive has made a lot of progress this last year. One of the things we're currently working on is to try to get this archive to be accessible on mobile devices. It's not 100% there yet, but we can access most of the information at this point. Also, we're working on a new export. We have kind of a unique problem in that we have a lot of data. We currently have over 20,000 people entered into this archive. We probably have another 20,000 to enter. And you know, you can see the numbers here, but one thing I didn't include is there are 30,000 images in the archive. And so one of the things we've been working on as well is preparing this archive to connect with other archives. So right now we're working on automating some processes that are quite laborious if we have a human being do it. And so Terry mentioned about connecting to other archives using the links, the little icons down at the bottom right that you're looking at right there. And one of the things that we have done is on the back end, we have created 4 data fields. And each of those data fields has the ability to have a URL that connects directly to another archive. And if there is information in that field, it automatically displays the icon and creates that link. So we don't have to do that manually. We've been focusing on getting a lot of our information in there. So as I mentioned, we have about 20,000 more people to enter, but we also have probably 10,000 more entries as far as presentations, papers, posters, you know, that sort of thing. We're almost caught up on the artwork. And one of the challenges that we've had is personnel. We also are a volunteer-based organization in general, SIGGRAPH is, but I have been getting a little bit of funding, you know, to hire some students. So when you have a lot of different people working on your archive, you end up with a lot of variations on how information gets entered and the accuracy of that information. So one of the things that happened was that the coding was all over the place. This is not an off-the-shelf program. So over the last year, one of our volunteers created the SIGGRAPH plugin that is, you know, consolidating all that material that has been coded in lots of different places. But the problem is he got hired at Microsoft, so now we've lost him. Well, he's still sort of an advisor. But we do need volunteers to help us with some of the programming that we need to create the API, to connect our archive to these other wonderful archives. We've had a lot of promises of funding, not all of which come through. And that takes a lot of our time, is writing these grants and, you know, just dealing with the lack of funding. And, you know, we don't need a lot of money, but we do need money to, you know, hire somebody that's going to be consistent and not have a job that conflicts with their responsibilities in the archive. And myself, I'm one of the co-directors of this. Jan Searleman is the other co-director. And Jan's retired, but she also has a number of other commitments. But I teach full-time. And last year, I co-ran the summit on new media art archiving, and Terry can attest, because he ran it this year, him and Wim van der Plas. It consumes all of your time, so there was less time for me to commit to the archive itself. And then, as a foolish individual, I took on the responsibility of coordinating the SIGGRAPH's 50th conference, which involves massive exhibitions and displays and an immersive space that's like, 30 meters long, and it's just an incredible amount of time. So that has been a huge challenge, is just managing my time towards the archive. One of our future goals is to really focus on improving the data that we have in this archive before we start to connect to all of the other archives in a real serious way. And that involves getting more personnel, more volunteers, more programmers, people to enter the data, massage the images. And we're inspired by what our teammates are doing. We want to work with some data visualization and just enhance the offerings that we offer to the researchers. And the basic problem is that we're missing a lot of information. So there's always that research component that's involved in getting our collection to be pretty solid before we connect to everyone else. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Phil to lead us through a discussion.
Do you want to go on to the question? During the course of our collaboration, we compiled all sorts of different questions, because we're asking them of each other, but certain ones repeat and repeat and repeat. And what I want to do is just very quickly give you a preview and then address some of those questions to each other and see what we have. Oops, sorry. We have questions around collections and their integrity, let's say, security, technologies. Everybody is implemented and has a legacy of different technologies, plus is grappling with the next stage of theirs, plus we're all very cognizant technology perhaps is increasing faster than we're keeping up with implementing the one we happen to choose. And the final set of challenges is, again, maintaining that dialogue, that network, that partnership. So I would like to pose the question to Paula around the choice of wiki and wiki data. What is contrasting to our archive, where we try to comprehensively describe an artist, you identify one and are relying on information or adding information to a different repository. Do you see what I mean? The editathon is about entering data about artists you've got in your archive, but not entering them into your archive, entering them into Wikidata, where you will refer to.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's already in our archive, the information.
So the editathon is about transferring that information into...
To link it.
To link it?
To link it. For example, some artists are already on the wiki,
Yes.
but it's not linked to our archive.
So it's editing the wiki link back.
So yes, this is the situation. Many artists are not even in the wiki.
Indeed.
But we did create an ID for this artist.
Yes.
And so we're going to put information in the wiki and link it to the archive. So the archive will be linked in a global repository. And if your archive would be also linked to that, we are going to try to make this network much more expanded.
Precisely. Sorry, the point I was trying to make is none of us is trying to, in our own archive, have all the information. No. That's the point, right? Yeah. It's not about this comprehensive collection being connected to this comprehensive collection. It's connecting the collections increases.
Exactly. It's like you preserving your identity as archive because, you know, the way each one is constructed is very unique and it's a lot of effort on this. There's no way to change. And the idea is to not be isolated in this information and to expand it to others similar information, so you can really have an overview of what this information means historically speaking. Yeah, so you are like trying to build a memory that it's more consistent of your own information. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I was wondering about the Wikidata decision that we made. And actually, if anybody else has questions related to any of the topics that we're discussing, please feel welcome to join in or even comments about these. So we started off looking at lots of different options, some of which included absorbing information into our own archives. And, you know, what would be the challenges and dangers of using some third-party repository as this central hub. And so when we chose Wikipedia or Wikidata, I began to worry, we don't have any control over what they do. And what happens if they make real critical decisions that adversely affect our archives or our ability to connect? And to tell you the truth, we face this all the time. Terry and I are both working with WordPress, and by the way, we haven't checked the archive today because this morning they did an automatic WordPress update, right? And so these kind of things happen where all of a sudden something doesn't happen because, or doesn't work properly because something out of our control has just happened. Do we worry about that? Do you guys worry about Wikidata making decisions that would adversely affect us?
Well, I think we are all the time on the rain, you know. It can happen. The internet is there. And we also can always have the URL field that we have in our archive, like you suggested in the beginning, but this doesn't really make the connection expanded, you know. So I don't know, you always are taking a risk. Even us with Tainacan, which is in the WordPress, Tainacan also needs to be updated, and I don't know until when the programmers will be alive, because, you know, we need them. And now you just told somebody went to Microsoft, and like Dalton is in the government now, so it's like this, you know, you always in a risk and in the edge to lose all the work you have done. This is the feeling I have. I mean, this is the fourth time we are working on a database of file, you know, and we have already lost everything on the web because we were hacked on 2013 and we started again. So, you know, worrying about what's going to happen in the future doesn't let us move on.
Okay. I think we can only make the best decision at the time. And right now, if we try to connect with each other, we need to utilize some of the existing data infrastructure. So wicked data would be the choice at the time. But I think we really have to be careful reviewing if anything ahead will affect our project. So I think that would be something we need to be more careful about.
What exactly would be the problem? How would affect the archive itself?
Just speculating. Maybe they change the the way that they identify artists, right? And so we're all depending on this unique ID. And one of the things that the SIGGRAPH archive did very early on is we talked to professional archivists. Okay, none of us have gone to school and have degrees in archiving, right? It's just something that we're learning as we go along. And so we talked to these archivists and they started mentioning these unique identifiers and all these different systems that existed, and the system that they use and the system that somebody else uses. And so there was no consistency, and there still today is no consistency on those unique identifiers. So Wikidata has their unique identifier for an individual, but we also have a lot of other systems. SIGGRAPH this year implemented something called what is it called? CID or something? Something like that. And they insisted that even the artists have to get one of these unique identifiers before they would even review your work, even though the system was really set up for researchers and academics writing papers, not really for art. And so that system is now required. We're requiring the Wikidata ID. So if that ID system somehow changes, there is some other thing, then we're going to have to conform to the new changes.
But this will not change anything in the archive itself, right? This would be the connection with archives that would be sensible, not the archive itself.
Right, exactly. But what we've found, I think, is that once we create things, people become dependent on that. There are a number of people that use the SIGGRAPH archive in their classroom. They give their students assignments based on the archive. And so, you know, we have to take some responsibility for providing the information in a way that they can access. And so we just have to be ready for change. I like what Terry said. We've got to...
Can I ask something?
Sure. Yeah, if anybody in the audience would like to ask a question.
Thank you so far. I think we have not much time left, but you have a lot of questions there that, of course, we are not going to answer right now. But since they are so important and it requires so much thinking before you could solve these problems, wouldn't it be worthwhile to try to create some sort of committee or whatever you want to call it that helps you think about these things, even people that are not able to actively work with you, but at least help you with advice on these matters? And wouldn't IZEA here, this IZEA, be a good opportunity to create that group of people? Maybe there are some people in the room that would be willing to advise you.
That's a good suggestion, actually. And I just want to go back to what Terry said about inviting you to come to the summit on new media art archiving. And I think that it's important for us to have this discussion. There's been the possibility presented that maybe we should form an international consortium dealing with new media art archives. Another question.
Yeah, I mean, though it's a long question around AI, but specifically speaking about, let's say, legacy video and images that are in low resolution. Now with GANs and different techniques, we are able to enhance those images. The question lies in until what degree it's something that archives have been evaluating to, let's say, some of these videos that are in very low resolution. That actually I made some tests and they're pretty impressive. And because they are enhanced, of course, they are much better to be shown sometimes. So have you come across that discussion? Because I mean, I think that's a relevant discussion in terms of one of the central aspects, even though it's not the key one, which is the digitalization of the archives.
If I can respond, yeah. Certainly, we look at or anticipate AI tools assisting. It depends a lot on the purpose of your archive, because from a preservation point of view, you do not want to alter the original work. On the other hand, from an aesthetic point of view or enjoyment, perhaps it is. I don't believe we certainly haven't looked at AI in that specific context. However, we definitely look at it in terms of, and begin to use it in terms of reconciliation of records, basic things like pattern matching of names. I would make the comment, though, that something to be careful of is, while we're busy trying to boil the ocean in building structure, the ability of narrow AI tools to give you structure may surpass our effort. And so I would say, in some senses, slow down the massive manual work, think more about structures, because those will lend themselves to automation rather quickly, I imagine. And we need to think less about doing the work and more about how to use tools, which includes, of course, then AI enhancement of resolution and things like that.
Well, I think we're just about out of time, but Paula's going to add a last comment. No?
I would just add that in FILE, we are, of course, thinking about how to use the AI, but we need to have much more input, because with AI, you need to have a lot of data. And also then, when we have enough input, we may start to think about the questions that we would like the AI to work on it. So it's still in the future, it's not now.
And I think Terry and I had a conversation about that too. We need to increase our data set in order to really use it effectively. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to talk to us throughout the week. And I hope to see you at the Summit for New Media Art Archiving on Friday and Saturday this week. Thank you again.